how would we have electricity in the golden age, in the ideal society? Well, honestly, I got an email about a year ago from Representative Bernie Sanders, my home state, Vermont, because I get a lot of those kind of emails because I sign up for a lot of email lists about things that I think are important. And what was happening a year ago or more is that there were two bills in Congress. One was supporting the use of more nuclear power, and one was supporting the use of more solar power. And the plan that suggested nuclear power suggested that the country spend $300 billion to create something like 30 kilowatts of power, every year. So $300 billion for, let's say, 30 kilowatts. I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but it was something to that effect. And then what Bernie Sanders was suggesting was that we use the modern solar technology and create solar farms instead of nuclear power plants, which create tons of nuclear waste and can blow up, as we noticed. That's just terrible. Like, a whole country all of a sudden radioactive, and then the whole world all of a sudden, there's radiation in the air just because of one poorly built nuclear power plant or one, earthquake or whatever. We don't need to be building more of those if we have alternatives. And this email, what it actually said was we could spend 30 billion instead of 300 billion on solar, and we could make 300 kilowatts. It was a ridiculously larger amount of electricity for a lot less money. So I think that in Congress and legislation at this point, there's just so many lobbyists, representatives of companies, and there's so much stuff that we probably don't know about, threats going on and bribery and hidden connections, people were put into office in the first place, people who were good to begin with but then they became corrupted, or people who were always just good at lying. I think that the focus in Congress is more on how can we as individuals make money being congressmen than it is on how can we as the elected representatives of the people represent the needs of the people and create goodness in the whole country. So the nuclear power plan was the one that actually got pushed through Congress and the one that actually started getting implemented. So all I'm saying is that solar power has huge potential for creating massive amounts of electricity. We don't need to be using as much electricity as we're using. All you need to do to cool your house down is dig a hole 5 or 10 feet into the ground and then dig a trench that deep, 25, 50 feet. It'd be a big, long trench, but then you just put a tube, 5-foot diameter tube, deep in the ground with one part of it open in your floor and one part of it open outside, 25, 50 feet away, and you just cover the side on your floor. And when you want cool air, because all the air in that tube, you bury the tube again, all the air in that tube gets cold from being down in the earth, you just open the hole in your floor and you open a window or a skylight or something in the ceiling, and it naturally, the pressure sucks all that cold air from the earth into your house, and instantly, your house can be 20 degrees colder. So, we don't need to be using as much electricity as we're using right now, but the cool thing is that we can, if we really want to, be using just as much electricity as we're using now, and we can be getting it all from solar power and wind power with technology that we already know about. That's an important thing to point out, is there's a lot of patents and trademarks on technology which most people don't know about, which would actually provide so much power that there wouldn't even be a need for all the industry of power companies and stuff like that. Which is probably why that technology hasn't been released, because those guys are all focused on, well, we need to make money and we need to have our jobs and we need, because that's how we can have abundance in our lives. But the bigger picture is essentially that if all of that technology got released and we didn't need that industry more, then that would all be more free time. We would be getting the benefit of all of that work without actually having to work. And maybe there wouldn't be as much money being moved around, but again, money is an empty symbol. It doesn't represent abundance anymore. Abundance is what we actually want. So there would be, electricity for everybody to get to use, and then everybody who was making the electricity would get to choose from, other things that they could do. They could grow food, that always needs to get done. They could probably build houses and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that people can do, for abundance. And if that happened with all the things that are like that, for instance, cars, if they released, like all the technology to make cars that can last forever, that can be upgraded and changed around, but that essentially can last forever and require very little power to run, then everybody would get to have cars, and we wouldn't have to be like junking so much metal and so much magnet and so much effort to create engines and all of the intricate stuff that goes into that. All of that effort would be avoided, but we'd still have the result of the effort, so we'd all have more free time. I mean, really, what more can you ask for than having a bunch of abundance and a bunch of free time? It's better than having a bunch of abundance because you have to work all the time, isn't it? So I think we could have electricity, we could have cars, we could have cool technological gadgets, we could have all of this stuff, and I think we can maintain it pretty easily. We just need to focus less on money and more on what money is supposed to be doing for us as a whole.